I have no doubt that William has the same type of questions and doubts and suspicions that we all have after those two very, very questionable births. Does he have to force them to take a DNA test? Leak it to me, goddammit! That's what someone at the palace has to do. Leak this thing. I promise you, I'm publishing it. I'm publishing every word because the public has a right to know. The time that Meghan was making all of these outrageous and untrue accusations about the British royal family, her treatment of staff behind the scenes was abominable.
Prince William does not need to force Prince Harry's children to take DNA tests in order to remove them from the line of succession. The Andrew and Mountbatten Windsor situation has already established the institutional mechanism. If the will of the monarch is present, the removal can be executed as a structural decision without any requirement for genetic verification. This is the structural framing Dan Wootton has now placed on the public record in his audience Q&A this week. In response to a question from Substack subscriber Hayley Ashburn about whether William, as future king, could compel the Sussex children to undergo DNA testing to confirm their royal lineage, the framing matters because it establishes that the question of the Sussex children's status in the line of succession is now a matter of institutional choice rather than of medical or scientific procedure. The structural feature of this institutional choice is consequential. The means already exist. The will is the variable. This is the central operational reading of the outspoken broadcast this week, and Wootton's framing offers no equivocation on the underlying assessment of the births themselves. The births of Archie and Lilibet, on his framing, raise the same type of questions and doubts and suspicions that a substantial portion of the audience has held since each child was born. The Sussex household refused to provide official photographs of Archie at the time of his birth in 2019, breaking the institutional convention that frontline royals provide such images in exchange for the institutional privileges they receive. The framing at the time was that the household was protecting the child's privacy. The same child has subsequently appeared continuously across the household's Instagram operations, at Disneyland engagements, on Easter holidays, at Halloween, and in commercial productions, including the candle line named after him.
Can William, as in Prince William, make Harry's family take DNA tests to prove they are royal, or do you think William would prefer to remove them?
The privacy framing has been progressively replaced by a strategic visibility framing. The structural inconsistency between the privacy claim and the operational use of the child for commercial purposes is what generates the underlying audience suspicion that something other than ordinary parental protection was at issue in the original refusal to provide a birth photograph. The Lilibet birth question carries its own structural irregularity. The Sussex household did not produce the kind of contemporaneous photographic documentation that the institutional record would normally include for a senior royal birth. The household subsequently selected the name Lilibet, which had been Queen Elizabeth II's personal childhood nickname used only by her closest family. The reporting at the time, sourced through palace staff, including butler accounts, was that the late Queen was extremely angry about the use of the name and characterised it as the only thing she'd ever truly owned. Having been taken, the Sussex framing was that the Queen had blessed the choice.
Realistic, because he doesn't need to. He doesn't need to. The whole Andrew Mountbatten Windsor situation has proven that it's actually incredibly easy, if the will from the monarch is there, to just remove two people from the line of succession, to just strip the titles. So while I have no doubt that William has the same type of questions and doubts and suspicions that we all have,
the two accounts could not both be accurate, and the structural reading the audience reached was that the consent framing was instrumental rather than substantive. The combination of the irregular birth documentation pattern and the contested name choice produces the kind of cumulative suspicion that has now reached the level of public discussion at which a senior royal commentator can openly invite leaks from inside the institution. The Andrew and Mountbatten Windsor precedent is the structural element worth examining in detail because it establishes the executable institutional pathway. The recent removal of Prince Andrew from his titles, including the removal of the Duke of York designation and the consequent changes in the official institutional positioning of his children, demonstrated that the institution has the operational capacity to execute title and succession changes when the reigning monarch determines that such changes are required. The procedure does not require court orders. It does not require parliamentary legislation. It does not require formal legal challenges to be navigated through the courts. The structural mechanism is the letters patent process, in which the monarch's signature is sufficient to alter the institutional positioning of any individual whose status is held at the Crown's pleasure. The Andrew case is recent. The mechanism is fresh in institutional memory. William, when he succeeds, will have the operational template to apply the same mechanism to the Sussex situation if he chooses to do so. The institutional preparation, Charlotte Griffith of the Daily Mail has reported that William will not include Harry in his coronation, indicates that the preparation work for such an application is already structurally underway. The Katie Holmes playbook question that subscriber Mary Goldine raised is the second structural element worth presenting. The Katie Holmes departure from Tom Cruise was, on Wotton's framing, one of the most operationally executed celebrity separations in modern Hollywood. Holmes assembled her departure quietly over an extended period. She secured her legal positions in advance. She established her custodial framework. She executed the separation with such precision that Cruise was reportedly blindsided despite his substantial professional and personal resources. The question is whether Harry could execute a similar departure from Meghan. The structural answer Wotton provides is that he cannot, because California family law places the operational constraint on the configuration. Children who have habitual residence in California for the relevant statutory period fall under California custody jurisdiction. California law would not permit Harry to remove the children to the United Kingdom against Meghan's wishes. The choice of California as the Sussex household's residence was, on Wotton's reading, partly motivated by exactly this calculation.
Well, I've got them. You're not taking them back. There's no court of law in California that is going to allow that to happen. So how can he do a Katie Holmes? He would have to live away from his children. So do I think the marriage will collapse? Absolutely, under the pressure of the financial desperation that is coming. But let me be clear, it has already collapsed. Anyone who doesn't believe that is buying propaganda from Town and Country or Harper's Bazaar. Oh, they're still so hot for each other. Really?
Meghan understood the jurisdictional protection California provides her in any future custody dispute. Establishing habitual residence in California was the structural precondition for retaining custody leverage. Harry's only path to executing a Katie Holmes departure would require leaving the children behind, which he is not operationally willing to do. The structural meaning of this constraint is consequential for the broader Sussex dynamic. The marriage continues not because Harry chooses it, but because the alternative configuration requires him to surrender contact with his children to a level he cannot accept. The same structural feature explains why Meghan's documented dismissal of UK schooling as barbaric is so operationally important. Educating the children in the United Kingdom for an extended period would establish UK habitual residence and would compromise Meghan's California custody position. She therefore will not permit it, regardless of Harry's stated preference for the Lambrook School option that Richard Eden reported he would like to pursue. The UK schooling fantasy is therefore Harry's expression of his preferred life, rather than a plan that could plausibly be executed.
Is Tyler Perry going to sue to get his money back from the grifters? In short answer to your question, no, he's not. But the longer answer here is much more interesting, because the Tyler Perry, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle situation is utterly fascinating, as what it shows is that they have loyalty to no one.
The plan would require Meghan's agreement, and Meghan's strategic interest aligns against the agreement. Harry's expressed wish therefore documents his preference without indicating any possibility of execution. Wotton's parallel observation on the marriage itself is structurally direct The marriage has, on his reading, already collapsed in the substantive sense that the partnership functions as a financial and operational arrangement rather than as an active relationship. The Town and Country and Harper's Bazaar framings of marital warmth are the public relations construction. The operational reality, as documented through the Nobu lunch photograph, the Montana relocation suggestion Harry has reportedly raised, the People magazine framing that Meghan lets Harry lead on family matters as if it were a generous concession, and the various other behavioural signals that have accumulated across the past year, is that the substantive marriage no longer functions. The legal marriage continues because the structural reasons for its continuation persist. Financial pressure will, on Wotton's analytical framing, eventually force the legal end as well. But the timeline is constrained by the absence of a successor financial arrangement on either side. The Tyler Perry case that subscriber Claire McLaughlin raised is the structural illustration of the loyalty pattern. Tyler Perry provided the Sussex household with the operational pathway out of Canada and into Los Angeles in March 2020. He provided the use of his private jet for the Freedom flight from Vancouver to Beverly Hills. He provided the use of his mansion as the Sussex household's initial Los Angeles residence. He provided personal endorsement at a moment when the household had limited operational support in California.
Will the palace release the bullying report when the time is right? Leak it to me, goddammit! That's what someone at the palace has to do. Leak this thing. I promise you, I'm publishing it. I'm publishing every word because the public has a right to know.
He provided the structural bridge from the institutional life the Sussex household was leaving to the Hollywood life they were entering. 5 years later, the operational relationship has dissolved. The Sussex household has reportedly ghosted Perry. The communications have stopped. The institutional friendship, the relationship represented during 2020, has not survived to 2026. The additional dimension of the Tyler Perry situation is that Perry himself has now become the subject of multiple sexual harassment lawsuits in the United States, and the structural meaning of these is consequential for the Sussex household's positioning. The original framing through which the Sussex household built its public narrative was that of figures escaping institutional misconduct and operating in solidarity with figures of moral standing. Perry, in his early provision of support, was positioned in that solidarity register. The subsequent harassment claims against him have removed him from that solidarity register on the household's own framing terms.
Now, that's the sort of preface, I guess, to say no. Sadly. No. No, goddammit, it's not coming. And that is a huge frustration, but the British royal family doesn't operate like a government body.
The Sussex household therefore had an operational incentive to disengage from Perry that derives from the household's own brand positioning rather than from any personal preference. The structural feature this captures is that the Sussex household's loyalty is calibrated to the brand value of the associated figure rather than to the underlying personal history. When Perry's brand value declined through the harassment allegations, the household disengaged. The pattern is consistent with the broader operational logic. Loyalty within the Sussex household is a function of the partner's contemporary brand value, not of historical contributions to the Sussex operation. The structural reading Wotton offers on the Tyler Perry outcome is that it demonstrates the household's pattern of disloyalty extends to figures who provided substantial personal support during the most operationally vulnerable period of the Sussex departure. If the household can ghost Perry, it can ghost anyone.
Summaries were released, we never saw the full report. So unfortunately, people aren't very good at leaking in this country. And people working within the British royal family are particularly worried because, of course, they sign documents connected to the Official Secrets Act.
The structural meaning for other figures who have provided support, including Victoria Jackson, the Bezos household before the Sanchez snub, the Kardashian network before the Remembrance Day consent dispute, and the various Hollywood figures who entertained the household during the early Los Angeles period, is that none of these relationships carries operational protection against the same outcome. The household's pattern is consistent. Loyalty flows in one direction. The structural cost of providing support is that the support is consumed rather than reciprocated. The Sarah Latham case Wootton references is the parallel structural illustration from inside the Sussex operation itself. Latham was hired from the Clinton network as a senior communications advisor for the Sussex household during the early Megxit period. Latham's professional reputation was substantial. Her experience advising the Clinton political operation provided the kind of crisis management depth the Sussex household required.
Can I see any sort of world where Buckingham Palace officially releases the bullying report that would completely condemn and slam Meghan Markle? No, I cannot.
She attempted to provide truthful advice and operational discipline. The relationship deteriorated quickly. Latham left the Sussex operation and went on to organise the Platinum Jubilee for the late Queen, which is the kind of institutional positioning that follows a successful career rather than a discredited one. Latham was, in Wootton's framing, willing to tell the truth. The Sussex response to the truth was the response that the household has consistently delivered to figures who attempt the same role. The figure is removed. The truth teller is replaced by a yes figure. The operational pattern persists. Dr. Sophie Shanduka's experience at Centre Bail follows the same structural arc. Truth-telling within the Sussex operation is structurally incompatible with continued employment, and the institutional record of figures who have attempted truth-telling is the documentary base on which the audience now reads the household's broader pattern. The Sussex staff treatment dimension Wootton frames is consequential because it carries weight that exceeds the operational dimension and reaches the moral register. The public has a right to know that at the same time Meghan was making accusations about institutional misconduct within the British royal family during the Oprah interview and the Netflix docuseries, her own treatment of household staff was, on the documented record, abominable. The Jason Knauf email, made publicly available through the Daily Mail litigation, documented that Meghan bullied 2 Crown employees out of their jobs. The Sussex Survivors Club, an informal grouping of former staff members, includes individuals who required psychiatric assistance after their tenure in the Sussex household. Hilary Ford's calculation on a separate broadcast placed the Sussex employee retention rate at approximately 3.7%, against an industry healthy benchmark of above 90%. The structural disjunction between the household's public accusations of institutional misconduct against the British royal family and the household's own internal treatment of its staff is the cumulative documentary record that the audience now reads as the operational reality. The accuser's behaviour, measured against the accused's behaviour, has produced a moral inversion that the audience can now read accurately. The structural meaning is that the institutional accusations cannot now be reincorporated into a sympathetic public framing, because the cumulative record of the accuser's own conduct has displaced the original framing's plausibility. The blackmail framing some commentators have raised regarding the Sussex household's relationship with the British royal family is the structural element that Wootton notes the Substack subscribers are now asking about directly, and which the full uncensored aftershow on the Substack platform addresses in detail. The framing posits that the Sussex household's continuing extraction of commercial value from the institutional connection functions as a form of operational pressure on the institution, in which each new commercial product carries the implicit threat of further institutional damage if the institution responds in ways the Sussex household considers adverse. The structural reading is that the institutional response executed through the Sandringham invitation withdrawal, the coronation exclusion plan, the Highgrove photograph removal, and the King's geographical Christmas card list omission of Sussex County is calibrated to demonstrate that the implicit threat does not produce the responses the household requires. The Tom Bauer disappointment Wootton offers in response to the question from subscriber Julia Getman is the structural detail worth presenting, because it captures the mainstream media versus independent commentary divide that has now consolidated. Bauer is the British investigative biographer whose book Revenge was a substantive contribution to the Sussex documentary record. Wootton, during his period at GB News, gave Bauer repeated platform space and provided source material that contributed to the book's content. Bauer acknowledged Wootton in the book.
In terms of today, I think it's impossible to look beyond Prince William and Catherine, because I think the task that they hold is so great, and I have a lot of faith in them. Now, by the way, that doesn't mean that I don't report on them honestly. I do, and I know that a lot of you will be annoyed by that.
When Wootton transitioned from GB News to independent Substack-based commentary at Outspoken, Bauer disengaged from the relationship. The structural reading Wootton offers is that Bauer is so embedded in the mainstream media system that he cannot operationally engage with the independent commentary network, even when the network is operated by figures who provided him with material support during his earlier work. The disengagement pattern is consistent with the broader mainstream media response to the independent commentary network. The figures who hold positions in the legacy system, including senior royal correspondents whose access depends on cooperation with the gatekeeping institutions, cannot extend recognition or engagement to figures who have moved outside the gatekeeping structure. The contrast Wootton draws with Lady Colin Campbell, Angela Levin, and Robert Jobson is the structural illustration of the alternative pattern. These figures supported Wootton during his cancellation period and have continued to support the Outspoken operation since its independent launch. Lady Colin Campbell hosted events for Wootton at Castle Goring during the period of his most difficult public exposure. Levin and Jobson have appeared on Outspoken regularly and have brought their senior royal reporting credentials to the independent platform. The structural reading is that the independent commentary network has now consolidated as a coherent operational ecosystem with senior reporting depth, audience reach, and the financial sustainability that Substack and direct YouTube distribution provide. The newer figures within the network, including Brittany from the Royal News Network, according to Tash, and Paidener, have integrated into the ecosystem and represent the next generation of royal commentary outside the rota structure. The Outspoken Substack model Wootton describes is the structural infrastructure underneath this consolidation. The paid monthly and annual subscribers, especially the founding members across the past 2 years, are the financial base that has allowed Outspoken to operate without big tech backing or billionaire dependency. Substack, as a platform, provides free speech protection that Wootton documents has been operationally essential during a period in which mainstream platforms have applied content management decisions that could have constrained his reporting. The Substack messaging feature allows direct subscriber communication, which Wootton notes he responds to personally without staff intermediation. The full uncensored aftershow is available to Substack subscribers without advertising, either live with the community chat or on demand. The structural meaning is that the independent commentary financial model has now demonstrated operational viability at the scale required to sustain senior reporting work, and the model is replicating across multiple senior commentators, including Paula Froelich, Rob Shooter, and Robert Jobson. The closing observation that emerges from the Q&A format itself is structurally consequential. Wootton's audience, through their Substack and YouTube questions, is now asking the operationally substantive questions about the Sussex situation rather than the entertainment-focused questions an earlier royal commentary audience might have asked. Will William bar Harry from the coronation? How will the institutional response be structured? What is the operational pathway for the line of succession decisions? Whether Tyler Perry will sue for material loss? What it would take for Harry to execute a Katie Holmes departure? The audience is now thinking in structural and operational terms, which indicates that the audience has internalized the analytical framework the independent commentary network has developed across the past several years. The structural reading is that the audience verdict has consolidated at the level of analytical sophistication required to read the institutional and operational decisions in their proper context. The Sussex public relations operation, which has been calibrated for a less sophisticated audience that responds to emotional and narrative framings, is now operating into an audience that is structurally beyond the level the operation is designed to address. The mismatch between the public relations sophistication and the audience sophistication is one of the operational reasons the household's outputs continue to land at variance with the intended reception. The audience reads the operational signals through frameworks the public relations team has not yet developed responses to, and the result is the cumulative pattern of contradiction that the documentary record continues to expand. The structural endpoint Wootton has now placed before the audience is that the institutional response to the Sussex situation is now substantially determined. The let them doctrine that Rob Shooter has documented from inside the palace is the operational posture. The Andrew and Mountbatten Windsor precedent provides the mechanism for any future structural decisions that William may choose to execute. The Katie Holmes playbook is closed to Harry by the California jurisdictional configuration. The Tyler Perry pattern indicates that no figure who has supported the Sussex household holds protective leverage. The Sarah Latham and Dr. Sophie Shandarkar cases indicate that internal truth-telling is structurally incompatible with continued operational presence. The Tom Bower disengagement pattern indicates that the mainstream media system will not extend recognition outside its own gatekeeping structures. The Lady Colin Campbell, Angela Levin and Robert Jobson alternative ecosystem has consolidated as the operational base for senior reporting outside the rota. The audience verdict has reached the analytical sophistication required to read the institutional and operational decisions in proper context. The runway on the Wakeford analysis is approximately 5 years. The path between the current moment and the endpoint is the working through of the financial mathematics against the documentary record. The pieces are now in place. The mechanism is operationally available when it is required. The audience is structurally prepared to read